Hello, everyone,
Hello.
and welcome to the next installment of the Dogs Podcast. This one is going to be pretty hefty. It's going to be a journey.
Maybe not in length,
Maybe not in length.
but in content.
Yeah, definitely touching on some more subtle things, non-tangible things,
Mm-hmm.
non-visible things, but feeling things. In this podcast, we're going to delve into feeling from a multitude of different angles.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with a story that I grew up with, and it's been a cornerstone and kind of a filter, you could say, throughout my life. So I grew up in the Transcendental Meditation organization movement, which is arguably maybe the most widespread meditation on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It's in every country. It has been around since the 60s, but it's been passed down for hundreds and thousands of years orally. And that tradition is the Vedic tradition. How that all began, the Transcendental Meditation movement, how that all began was with a pesky, simple little thought that kept coming to Maharshi. He was in the Himalayas. His master had passed away, Gurudev, and he went into silence for years, many years in the mountains in the Himalayas. And while he was up there, he would go and sit with other sages and saints up there that were also in silence, just existing and being. But they would sometimes congregate together, and there was one sage called Tatwala Baba. He was part of the Baba tradition, and they would sit amongst each other on the banks of the Ganges and just sit and not talk because there wasn't anything to talk about. I didn't pay attention to worldly news or anything. They weren't foodies or they would just sit and exist and be with each other. And they did that ever so often. And Maharshi describes it as this thought just kept coming to him, and he would observe this thought come, and then he would just kind of let it go and carry on, and then months later it would come back, and he would let it go, and then months later it would come back, and it kept coming back enough to where he brought it up to Tatwala Baba, and Tatwala Baba said, we don't really give any energy to those two thoughts.
Mm.
Just let it go. It'll go away. And so some more time went by and it came back, and more time went by and it came back, and then he brought it up again, and Tatwala Baba said, everything outside, everything below the Himalayas, outside of the Himalayas is just mud. It's just muddy kind of chaos.
Mm.
and to, again, not pay very much attention to this thought. And so Maharshi said, okay, let it go. More time went by. It came up again, and he brought it up again. And Tawala Baba said, maybe you should just go deal with this thought. And the thought was to go to this well-known city, Kanyakumari, at the very tip of India, to this one temple. He didn't know why or anything, but he was in the mountains, the very far north of India, and this was very, very far away. And this was back in the late 50s. And so he said, okay, I will go and then I will come back. So he gathered his sandals and who knows, that's probably it because he didn't have any possessions, and started his journey south, which if you look at a map of India, it's a extremely long distance. So he walked the whole way. And
Before you continue the story, I've heard this story many times now, and I still smile when I listen to it. And a piece of it that I find so wholesome is the idea of two people who have transcended qualities of the world and of existence, and to the point where they don't have anything to say, really. They just be. But the fact that they still come together and sit together, even if it's in silence, is so just sweet and tender to imagine and think about.
Yeah.
But anyways, continue.
So he made his way to this city, this town in southern India, and he didn't know what he was doing there, but he knew it would go to this temple. And so he was there for a little bit, and one morning really early, because he would get up and go to the temple at like 4:00 in the morning or something, but he was walking there and walked past somebody who stopped him, this older gentleman, and he said, "Are you from the north?" And Maharshi said, "Yes." And he said, you probably have some knowledge to give. Would you want to do some lectures? And Maharshi said, like, sure, oh, yes, I will speak. And before he could kind of say anything more, the guy just kind of disappeared. And the next day, the guy showed up where Maharshi was staying and said, okay, here are the days. It's 3 days where you'll be lecturing at this library. And what are you going to be talking about? Maharshi said, I don't know. Let me think about that. And so he jotted down some things that he was going to speak on, and the guy rushed away, and Maharshi was like, well, can I have a copy of that? What I'm going to talk about. And so the lectures began, and Maharshi spoke for 3 days at this library, 3 consecutive days. And each day, more and more people would show up. There was, I don't remember, hundreds and hundreds of people that would show up, and they just kind of kept growing and growing. And at this library, there was a caretaker there this older man who had taken care of this library for a very, very long time. I think it maybe his whole life. And after Maharshi was done lecturing, he went up to Maharshi and said, I listened to you speak for the last 3 days. And I I've listened to a lot of saints and speakers and lecturers and teachers come through and speak here over my lifetime. But I haven't really paid attention because the lecture and the lecturer were not one.
Mm.
And he said to Maharshi, he said, "You are one with your lecture. What you speak on, you exist in, you live."
Mm.
And that really stuck with me as uh, a younger kid growing up. And it was something that kind of lingered in my awareness. But as I've gotten older, it's become more evident, I suppose you could say, what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had an idea, but now, having lived for a little bit on this planet, now I have a little bit more of a grasp of what that is. And there's been a few people in my life growing up, not many, that I could say are that. And
Are what?
are they live what they speak about,
Mm-hmm.
what they quote unquote lecture about.
Mm-hmm.
They also exist in, they live, they live it to the fullest. But having a few, thankfully, of these individuals in my life has helped guide me, I suppose, in my journey with within my spiritual practice, self-referral practice of transcendental meditation. I've had some very good role models who embodied that knowledge and really lived it to its fullest. And that contributed a great amount to the depth of experience that I was able to have, learning about the Vedic tradition, learning about these concepts, these ideas of consciousness and expanding consciousness and feeling and being, and having an intellectual understanding of it, but also being able to have the experiential understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important. And I feel that is the nucleus of what a lecturer and a lecturer should be, you could say, is those are intertwined.
A teacher and their teachings.
Yes. The having the intellectual understanding of something, but also the experiential understanding of something.
Yeah.
Those are in unison.
Yeah.
They're symbiotic. But so oftentimes what we see in politics, in all across the world, it's just so evident, is this idea of intellectually saying something, using words and saying things, saying the right things, quote unquote, but the actions in life not quite being up to speed with those words. And I understand that that's what we're here doing.
Yeah.
We're all working that out. We're all ascending to this experience of harmony and knowledge and growth of enjoyment,
Deeper understanding.
deeper understanding, and that the intellectualization of that is very pronounced in life, but I don't really see a lot of the experiential following that.
Well, it's also, I could learn something and have a certain grasp of it through my intellect, of understanding, of I understand what this means intellectually. I can piece this together. And then being able to be aware that that is the depth of your understanding of something. Like before Juno passed, and I believe we mentioned this in an episode, there was understanding of grief. But in myself, I knew I didn't have the experience. I knew I didn't have that depth of understanding of what grief is until the experience came.
Yeah.
And I feel that that is something so valuable too in it, is maybe knowing where we're at in our understanding and holding ourselves accountable of our knowledge. And it can go either way too. It could be where someone maybe has an experience, but they don't know how to speak on it. They don't have words for it. But a lot of times, what is seen is people that receive a piece of it, that mind piece of it, and speak as though there is full understanding, when perhaps there is that other piece that is so important to have for that full understanding.
Yeah, Buck puts it pretty funnily. In a recent-ish podcast, he was mentioning how he's observing in the horse world, and what we observe in the dog world is trainers tooting their horn before they can do the work. And that resonated because it's not like they're what they're saying is there's a lot of truth to it, but then putting that into action and following through on the words, those are two completely different things. And so there's what?
Living it.
Living it.
Yeah.
And exuding it, embodying it. And it's a beautiful thing listening to people speak truth. It's a beautiful thing to observe, but it's also it can be a little off-putting when it's very clear to some people, definitely to myself and probably you.
Yes.
When it just sounds like words. And again, it's just it's all possibilities. Everyone's doing the best that they can. Everyone's we're going to be talking quite a bit about feeling, and there's just different gradations of feeling.
Yeah.
How somebody feels isn't bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
And Cole and myself, the way that we feel is we are playing a different game than other dog trainers, dog handlers. We are playing a different game. A completely different game. We are on a completely different level. It's not a better level or a better game, but it is a vastly different level of feeling and understanding when it comes to dog handling. Because what somebody says is neutral or a balanced dog, we look at and don't see that.
Right.
We see that that particular dog handler, dog trainer's dog has quite a ways more to go. And so there's different feeling.
Yeah.
It's different feeling. But that was a big driving factor for us in our development and getting to where we are today, because we were very successful with dogs, but to a degree. We were using more dog psychology, which we'll get into probably a little bit more here in a little bit. And we were successful to a degree, and we've mentioned it in some previous podcasts, but it wasn't to this fullest degree. And we wanted maximum feeling. Maximum feeling. And what that means to us is, what that looks like is what we've described in our most recent podcast, which is a fully domesticated dog, where there's feeling of everything and the ability to navigate everything, as opposed to having a lack of feeling in some areas. And when there's a lack of feeling in some areas, that feeling can be expressed in a lack of compassion, a lack of empathy, reactivity, etc., for the other thing. And so therefore there's not complete harmony.
The thing about the journey for me, as you're mentioning this, is that in the moment, I wasn't seeking feeling. I don't think we used that word a
No.
whole lot at all.
No.
Ever. And so it's looking back, reflecting, oh, that's what we were seeking. That's a piece of what we were looking for. But in the moment, there wasn't anything to define that.
There wasn't. But there was,
Intellectual.
for me, there was, when I was researching dog handling methods and observing other dog trainers and stuff, I would observe them and I would look at their personal dogs and I would be like, that's not good enough. And so it wasn't, I couldn't point to feeling, as you just mentioned, but I knew that that wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, I feel like what set you up in a good way for that is that you were raised with a teacher that embodied their work, that
Yes.
embodied their teachings through Maharshi. So you had such an idea of what that could look and feel like to bounce other people off of, that you went to learn from.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because Maharshi, he wasn't reactionary. He wasn't driven by his instincts or his senses. And what that looks like,
right,
is everything is good. All is okay. All is in place. And here is a very clear path of harmony. Seek the highest first. Consistently go beyond your senses so that you can sit in harmony, sit in connection with everything in life. And that is through transcendental meditation twice a day. You go and sit and transcend beyond the senses, where it's an abyss of everything. It's unboundedness. No limitation, but complete connection. There's no dullness in it. And doing that day after day, they use the analogy where it's dip the cloth and dye, and then you set it out in the sun, and then you dip it in dye and you set it out in the sun, and over time that color stays.
Because when it sits in the sun, the color fades.
Because the color fades.
Which is like when you come out of meditation, the color fades.
Yes. That's feeling and understanding and remembrance of connection fades. it fades as you interact with life and as you experience life. And so I knew that I wanted to have that level, that highest level. I wanted to seek that highest level because anything short of that didn't feel very good, as we've mentioned. But
As we experienced.
as we experienced and as we've mentioned here and there, but we failed dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't feel good to fail them, or it didn't feel good to not be able to know how to support them through a feeling or thought or instinct or sense
Mm-hmm.
to the other side. That really didn't feel good to be on such a roller coaster up and down, or have to get so animal-like in our response to dogs to have them conform to what it is that we were looking for,
Mm-hmm.
asking of them. And so observing other trainers, other methodologies, we didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked outside. Because again, all possibilities. I was like, I don't see it here in the dog industry.
See the lecture and the lecturer
Yeah.
unified.
I saw lots of words being said about energy, and it's all about energy, and it's all about all the buzzwords
Mm-hmm.
that trainers will use, and it just didn't line up. I didn't see the complete level of elevation and complete domestication that I was looking for, that we were seeking. And so we looked to the horse world and we saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that we just saw it, we felt it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we went to, and maybe some of you listening have gone to a buck workshop, but it is so thick in the air there, the energy.
Yeah.
The level of firmness and softness and awareness and integrity and ability to be silent, observing and responding to the other being in horse form. It's so thick in the air there. I always leave those workshops just feeling so inspired
Yeah.
and so moved in such a beautiful way.
Well, we've been going to buck clinics for a long time, and I recommend them to people that don't have animals, don't have horses, because the way that I've thought about it in the past and described it is you get to go and sit with a master. You get to go and be in the presence of a master of their craft.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means to me is you get to go be with someone who is embodying the lecture,
Mm-hmm.
who is living their work. And that's so rare that I'm finding. And so even people that are not at all connected to animals, I'm like, I recommend his clinics because that feeling is so inspiring, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess one thing that is some details about that, about going to those clinics and also this ability to feel to more of a maximum level is when somebody observes natural horsemanship, the way we see it, the way we feel it, is there is it's almost like Buck or his hands are silence. They're able to turn off all of their thoughts, almost transcend their thoughts, their feelings, so that they are listening and feeling 200% of that animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the response is, there's no muddiness to that response to the animal. It's all them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, one way of picturing this is the ask on the lead rope, or when we're handling dogs, the ask on the lead, the intention on the lead stops at the connection of the animal. We don't go into their court to get them to do what it is that we're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
We put forth an ask and we wait for them to come and meet that. And that is a very beautiful, magical place.
Yeah.
And that is where that magic happens. And so and this is coming back to the lecturer and the lecturer, and when those things don't line up, what we see, what that feels like and looks like to us is where a dog handler is going into the dog's court, going into their physiology and having them conform or do what it is that they're asking them to do.
Yeah.
So the human's intention is going into the animal's court so that they respond. And that could be through food, luring them, distracting them from a feeling that they're having, or paining them, forcing them to do something.
Well, it's like you're saying that witnessing someone working with a horse in this way is like they're transcending. And there's a quality of quieting yourself so that you're not throwing your emotions in with the animal that you're working with, because they already have a lot of their own stuff going on inside of themselves. They don't need our stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need our baggage or our frustration or anger or excitement or just these extra feelings coming at them
Mm-hmm.
in potentially bigger ways. And then those ebbing and flowing and changing from maybe frustration to anger to sadness to whatever, and having the animal have those be put on them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, like you're saying, the person is in more of like a neutralized state. It's not about my feelings. It's not about my ego or my, I don't know, control.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not about me. It's not about me. It's
Right.
about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that to us is fairly rare
Mm-hmm.
to see. Because in basic communication, how communication breaks down is because one person isn't listening.
Right.
And so why aren't they listening? Usually it's because they're having thoughts and feelings of their own that are overshadowing their ability to listen
Right.
to the other person or dog or horse.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this very beautiful thing that's happening when we see Buck work and his elevated hands and stuff is, or just a master in anything, is there's just this quiet stillness, but alertness and aliveness in them, in their craft.
Yeah.
And feeling in their craft. And I suppose observing other handling techniques, whether it's in horsemanship or dogmanship, it just seems to be a lot of the human's input,
Mm-hmm.
more human input and toppling of the animal than anything. And just overpowering, whether it's through food or force. And to us, it's not that challenging to see it. It's not that challenging to see it. And I suppose I suppose maybe it is a bit challenging for folks to see it.
Yeah.
I suppose that it is, because it can be very hard to discern whether a lecturer and a lecturer are one or if they're not. Because there's some really, when somebody is speaking truth, it will resonate with so many people and almost blind them to the fact that there is not an alignment.
Well, there's
There.
also an innocence to it that I've experienced of if someone says they're a master, I will believe you.
Mm,
If someone says I'm a doctor, this is my profession, this is what I was schooled in, I believe they're the expert. And it's unfortunate that a person has to make those calls on their own
right.
and maybe not trust as much
Mm-hmm.
and question and make those observations instead of what I used to do, which was if you say you're something, I will believe you and I will
Mm-hmm.
walk with you.
Right. Well, some things that have stood out for us that might help people, and this is kind of a little pokey, but so be it, is with positive only, for example. They How we see them not lining up with their lecture is, and to this maximum level of feeling. Because there's a level of feeling in positive only, and I really appreciate their intention. Like that idea, that concept of positive only sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not realistic in the sense of it's realistic if you're a very elevated being, in my eyes, because then life is all positive.
Mm-hmm.
But you act as if life is all positive, and you understand that everyone is trying their best, and there is almost an acceptance of the fact that everything exists. But what we see, when I have experienced viscerally with positive only people, is that they're the most reactive and aggressive when it comes to humans
Mm.
and how they act in life and handle dogs. And so the positive only stops with one species. It's not expressed or shared with all species.
It's selective positive only.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a dichotomy there because we're positive only with dogs, but not humans.
Like,
Humans will protest against you, will change laws, will sue you. And it's just very much the opposite of positive only. And so right there is the lecture and the lecturer not lining up.
mm-hmm.
And that is something that was not present in Maharshi.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, this is what we believe, and this is what we do, and this is our path, and this is what we suggest for people, and then what we offer. But it stops there.
Yeah.
We don't go into other people's courts to try to force them to change.
Well, it's how you handle humans is how you're going to handle dogs. How you handle your personal dog is how you're going to handle other people's dogs. It's all intertwined.
Well, because we're talking about feeling, I feel that maybe there is somewhat of a connection between positive only's ceiling in their ability to help dogs. Because they arguably probably euthanize or delete dogs, the most dogs, other than pounds, every year. And that's due to them not being able to help them when the food fails or the medication and drugs fail, then they behaviorally euthanize the dog. And that probably doesn't feel very good.
To who?
To the handlers, to the trainers, to the behaviorists.
Or to the civilians.
Or to the civilians.
Like it's a lot of people have dogs are their children.
Hmm.
And to be advised to kill your child because of their behavior is pretty intense.
Yeah. And so they don't, they probably feel those feelings and don't express them towards a dog, you could say. And so that energy has to go somewhere. And it comes out in the direction of force trainers, or if you're not positive only, then you're against them, basically. They're against you. And so I can't help but think or feel that there is some dot connecting there,
Mm-hmm.
because that probably doesn't feel good to have a ceiling in their handling and ability to help a being. And if they're not going to handle dogs and in a sometimes in a more firm way, which is necessary, not force way,
Mm-hmm.
but firm way. If they don't go that, if they almost turn a blind eye to that even being a possibility, then it's got to come out somewhere. Because life is not all positive. That's just not. It's not. It's not living in reality.
Right. Like the world, there is good and bad in the world. There is
Yes.
challenge and
Yes.
things that a being might not like that just exist,
Yeah.
and we learn to navigate those things.
It's a beautiful thing to learn how to navigate stress and stressful situations.
Yeah.
But
New situations,
yeah,
scary
change
situations,
is hard.
old triggers,
Yeah.
our past.
And then, because I just talked about positive only, talk about force training, more punitive measures. And I've heard them talk about scientific studies that they do. They both of them talk about scientific studies to corroborate their work and their angle in dog handling. And I find it funny, because they'll talk about studies done on rats, studies done on rabbits, studies done on foxes or marine animals, or so on and so forth, to corroborate the force, the punishment, or the reward. And I just, like, the big elephant in the room in my eyes is the feeling of the animals in those scientific studies being fed cocaine water, or being stuck with needles, or put through a maze to get through to food, or being kept in a tank.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is the feeling of those animals? It's not in the science there. I don't think science does feeling.
I think that's a really hard thing to do a study on.
Yeah.
It's such a good point, though.
And so that's just those are very, in my eyes, very low hanging fruit to point at the lecture and the lecturer not lining up.
Well, it's sometimes science can be the foundation with which people stand.
Yeah.
And so that brings about the question of what is the foundation based on?
Yeah. For us, there's obviously a lack of feeling.
Right.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't feel good to us, because we want maximum feeling. And we feel and see, we've felt and saw maximum feeling in horsemanship. And that's what drew us into this way of handling dogs.
I feel like a big piece of this that has expanded my awareness, at least, is continuing to put ourselves in the other person, the other being, the other animal's shoes. Like you're saying with these scientific studies, is instead of how is this going to benefit me, what am I getting from this? It's how does that other being feel? How do the animals feel in the studies? How does the dog feel? How does the person I'm working with feel? And having that be a loop that happens in these different situations. And something that I've learned or am learning is that I can have my own feelings about things. And that's a great thing. But something that you have helped me become more aware of is that quality, is I'll have something coming up and then you have brought up in the past the other side. And that so quickly neutralizes my side of things. Because I'm now putting myself in the receiver's shoes and checking myself. It's a great way to check myself and my actions and what effect those might have on the environment or on those around me, and, doing my best to walk that line. I was watching a video yesterday or a couple of days ago, and it was a video of, maybe you've seen it, it's a woman at a zoo and she's holding her baby. It's like a brand new baby and it's at a zoo. And this, I don't know what species it is. If it's a gorilla, it's a larger
primate.
Yeah, primate. And she's sitting there staring at the baby through the glass. And she goes and gets her own baby and brings it to the glass and shows this other mother her child. And it's, it's like a viral video. It's huge. And it's beautiful in a way because of the connection between species and the intelligence and the feeling of that connection between species and between mothers. But I watched this video and I wept. Like I like put my phone down and just sat and cried. Because as beautiful as that is, that mother is in captivity.
Well, that's kind of what we're talking about. There's this intellectual understanding that other animals are very intelligent, highly intelligent, but they're not intelligent in our way. And so therefore we choose to do things to them because we are failing to recognize and fully understand and experience the connection that we have with them. Like, intellectually, we understand that whales are very smart and pigs are very smart and dolphins and now plants communicate, but there's this, it just doesn't quite make it from the head to the heart.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing. And I think in one of the more recent podcasts, Or maybe I haven't mentioned it, but there was this documentary that made me pretty angry that I watched.
Which is quite a thing because you don't get angry that often.
There's not much in life that moves me to that place. Like, I can't remember the last time I got angry. It was at this documentary, actually. And the documentary is called Earthlings. This was many years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago. I got so angry I had to stop the documentary multiple times. But if you are faint of heart, you do not want to watch this movie,
I haven't
this
watched it.
documentary. It's gnarly about just our human species and this lack of feeling. But I think about it now, and I could probably watch it now and be okay with it.
Mm.
Because there's not this anger. I let that go. It's just, life is what it is. We are all here living completely different existences and experiences in life. Whether you're positive only, whether you're forced trainers, we don't care.
Right.
We appreciate you. We appreciate anyone. You do the nastiest thing as a human, that's gonna happen. Like, darkness exists in the most atrocious forms.
Mm-hmm.
But light also exists in the most beautiful form, and that is creation.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like getting to that place, that is completeness. That's more harmony, the most harmony, maximum feeling, because you are able to have maximum feeling for the beings, the dark beings and the light beings and the medium beings and everything, all of it.
Well, that's such a great point about feeling in general. Is feeling is it's everywhere. Everyone experiences it. This is, our/my perspective. But we all experience it. It's a part of life. It's a part of life in a big way. And that idea of shunning the bad is so prevalent and it's intense. I mean, feeling quote unquote bad things is feeling the darkness within us, within life, is very hard work.
Mm-hmm. It's very hard work.
It's very hard work. And it makes sense that there's so much in life that is there to help us not feel those things.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about distraction?
Yeah.
Numbing ourselves with alcohol and drugs and
Social
shopping,
media,
social
television,
media. Yeah.
food.
Yeah, there's lots of distraction from feeling. Yeah.
And I feel that what can happen is that hard feelings there's a desire for them to us to not feel them. Like, if I cannot feel the bad stuff, then I'm going to try to not feel the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But what can happen is, by not feeling the bad stuff, we're also not feeling the good stuff or the medium stuff, because I don't know if you can pick and choose what you feel in life.
We certainly try. We
Right.
do our best through drugs and alcohol and distraction to do our best to not feel those challenging things in life.
But it can be at the expense of some of the most beautiful things.
Well, it's at the expense, in my opinion, of feeling.
Yeah.
When we'll bring it back to dog handling now, but it's the other thing that we see in dog handling with other methods is that they're trying to get these feelings in the dogs to go away, just like they try to get the bad feelings to go away in their own life. They're trying to distract the dog from these strong feelings that they're having. Maybe it's that they want to kill something. Maybe it's because they're snapping. Maybe it's because they're who knows what. They're overexcited and they're disregarding things in life, or they're so feral minded that they want to run away from life. All
Or
the
hurt
behavior
themselves.
hurt themselves. And so those feelings make us feel things
Mm-hmm.
as a handler, as a trainer, and we want that to go away. Just like the darkness, just like the sorrow, just like all of the stuff in life that we don't like and that's hard in life. We want it to go away. And in that process, we go into the animal's court and we distract them or force them so that that feeling goes away. And that is exactly what they do not do in natural horsemanship.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we do not do in the gentle method, is that we've had a lot of practice, and Buck had a lot of practice with his mentors of learning to sit and guide those feelings, however nasty they may be, but you come at them with patience and empathy. It doesn't take a brainiac to topple a dog through food or through force. The skill is in guiding the animal through their feelings.
Which is
That's
hard.
patience. That's hard.
It's hard for us to do for ourselves.
It's hard for us to do ourselves, and therefore it's almost exponentially more challenging for us to do with another species, because we don't speak their language, and it's so raw, their expression. It's very basic, and I think in that basicness of nature, fight and flight, it can kind of rock us to our core.
It's like raw feeling.
Yeah.
There's no intellect behind it.
Yeah.
There's no reasoning behind it of,
Yeah.
oh, 10 years this thing happened to me and I'm feeling this stuff and now I'm going to express it in this certain way. And I feel that that is something that humans can connect with, because there are things that come up in the human experience that we might not be able to intellectualize. We might not be able to walk it back and why did this happen and this and that and use our mind. It's just a feeling
Mm-hmm.
in our body, in our heart, in our soul, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm. I've been thinking quite a bit over the years about what's harder, to work with horses or work with dogs. And I feel like I have a fairly good argument that it's more challenging to work with dogs because we can overpower them when they feel things.
Mm.
And that is a very dangerous thing, because when you work with horses, unless you're a really strong person and you've got some nasty tools, you can't overpower them. But with dogs, we can. The other complicated thing about dogs is that they live so intimately with us
Mm-hmm.
in our homes. And they're subjected to so many more things in life because of that.
Yeah.
But I think the first and foremost thing is this overpowering thing. Positive only, they fall off pretty quick, because if a dog's really in a bad place, they don't want food. So that they fall off pretty quick. But positive only it's not the most popular. They're trying to be, but the most popular is the overpowering of the animal. And the only reason why we can do that is because they're small.
I feel like
And that's such a dangerous thing because of this lack of feeling for the animal and compassion for the animal. And I'm not saying that the way we handle dogs is all sunshine and rainbows. It's not. There is a level of firmness that needs to be a part of the educational process, their existence. But when that happens and how that happens, that is it's a very refined place. Because if a dog is feeling instinctual or feeling very much engrossed in their senses, in our opinion, firmness in that space will lead to some problems and some lack of reliability in the future.
well, what do we lead with?
What do you mean?
Like, do we lead with the firmness?
No. No.
Yeah. We lead with the feeling,
We lead with the feeling and softening the animal so that when
connecting
we,
with the animal,
yeah, connecting with the
feeling
animal.
the animal. And then when that's the foundation.
Yeah.
It's what we were talking about earlier. What is the foundation of it? That's the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Is I can feel you.
Yeah. And that, I feel,
I can listen.
we were just talking about it, but I think that that's probably one of the most challenging things that we've observed over the years that people go through is this feeling thing.
Yeah.
I remember working with this one person, and I had been working with this person for quite a while. This was before the gentle method. And when we developed the gentle method, I was coaching this person in it. And they had some serious meltdowns because it was just too intense for them to feel.
Because we were going from not feeling
Yeah.
to now we're going to feel
Very
a
intimate.
lot.
Yes. Yeah. And it was almost like a 180.
Mm.
And it was very intense for that person. And we've also noticed it over the years of doing workshops that people can have a hard time with it because, number one, they're learning something new.
The dog's learning something new.
The dog's learning something new, but the handler, a lot of times, they're either green, they're like used to walking on a loose lead, and then we kind of are teaching them a lot of the opposite. We're coaching people to do a lot of the opposite things that most dog trainers tell them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that process, if we come back to this ability to communicate and listen, that begins to break down when we start having strong feelings ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can no longer feel for the other being because our feelings are overshadowing our ability to feel the other being.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore the communication breaks down. And so if you're somebody who has a very challenging dog, an advanced dog that has strong feelings, you're going to probably feel things in response to those strong feelings. The dog hitting really hard on the leash, the dog barking, the dog lunging,
The dog triggering on a lot of things.
The dog triggering on a lot of things. And the process, what we try to help people understand in the way that we work with dogs is that if you go to other trainers, it's just, okay, light them up with the e-collar, or try this, try the chicken leg, try the chicken neck, try cheese. There's this elevation, this escalation, trying to get the dog to stop feeling what they're feeling. But the way we coach people is we help them learn to sit in that feeling and sit with it, guide it in a cordial way and in a productive way to keep you and the dog safe. But we're not trying to change the dog.
Yeah.
We're trying to be with them through the feelings.
Yeah.
Until the feeling subsides, and then then they can feel us. And that process, not only for the dog, but for the human, it can take time
Yeah.
because of the feelings that are involved. Because so many people get embarrassed, so many people get frustrated, so many people get angry
Mm-hmm.
and
Defeated. Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's the work.
Well, it's such a beautiful gift. It's such a beautiful gift for a being in life to be given a guide who listens to the feeling and is able to guide them through the feeling without putting the feeling aside. That's the dream for a person, is to have guides like that that can help navigate that situation instead of telling you that your feelings are bad or how dare you or why would you feel that or let's just think about something else, because we don't talk about that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, because then how does that make that animal feel?
Yeah.
How would that feel as a child?
Yeah.
Stop talking about that. Stop acting like that. Rather than talking through it, guiding the kid through it.
Being there with them.
Being there with them through
Yeah.
the feeling. Rather than making them feel bad for it.
Yeah.
Punishing them for the feeling.
Or just the feeling, I want to express, I'm a child, I want to express myself, and then the parent puts you in front of a TV.
Yes, or here's an iPad, here's an iPhone.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. Let's, go have dinner instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you define or explain overpowering a little more? Overpowering a dog. I want to loop it back to that and what you were mentioning about how we can overpower dogs much more easily than we can with horses,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means.
Yeah. Well, you just put it fairly well by bringing up a kid, because with a kid, they're acting a certain way. Here's an iPad. Overpowered. In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a TV. Here's a chocolate bar. Here's who knows what.
Nothing, I'll leave the room.
Yeah, sure. Or there's overpowering them with force. Smacking them in the face. Pulling them aggressively out the door and just screaming at them. Who knows what. Overpowering them emotionally, physically. And it's no different with dogs. We can overpower them with prong collars, shock collars, submitting them, grounding them, however you want to call it.
You can overpower them also just being too heavy-handed with a slip lead or with a harness or...
Yes, or with words as well. Tone, voice, or with food. To me, food or a toy is no different than putting an iPad or a TV in front of a kid. It's that same level of distraction. Dogs, for the most part, the dogs that fail positive only and treats and toys are the ones that don't care about that. So the kids who are like, I don't care about an iPad or a TV.
Mm-hmm.
I want connection. You have to guide me through this or force me to do something. Mm-hmm. To us, the dogs that don't really want toys or food, they're just screaming for connection.
Yeah.
They're like, I want that.
Medication.
Or medication.
It's also overpowering.
Yes, medication. It's just numbing the feeling. That's we all know from personal experience that we can only numb ourselves so much, and like the feeling is still there. If something traumatic happens in life, we have stress, we have anxiety, we have to deal with it at some point, or we medicate ourselves, drink alcohol, or take medication for a whole life to not deal with the root problem or cause. So,
which is not easy.
no,
Like,
no,
we're not sitting here saying, "Oh, that just, stop medicating your dog or your kid or whatever, yourself."
it's a very
That
tricky
might be the
thing.
hardest thing that happens in that being's life is working through those feelings.
Yeah,
Like, it's
it's so tricky.
yeah.
Like I like to say the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life was when I was a monk
Mm.
and sat in meditation for 12 to 17 hours a day. Because I sat with all of my demons and the darkness and all the weird thoughts that people have and the weird feelings that come up. Guilt, sorrow, disappointment, anger, frustration,
Probably
uh,
some anxiety.
some anxiety. And that was so hard to deal with. So, yeah, we're not trying to say that this is easy by any means, but I guess for us, what coming back to the lecture, what was beautiful to see in Buck and his hands was that i- they exude that they've done the work. They've done so much of the work. They don't get caught up in the trivial things that most people get caught up in. They're not on Instagram bashing people. They're probably not even on Instagram very much. They're not getting worked up at life, because if they easily got worked up at life, they are not going to be able to handle horses the way that they do, because they're easily worked up.
Mhm.
They're reactionary. They're triggered. They can easily get triggered in feeling.
Mm. That's a good point.
And that it takes time. It takes time to develop that. It takes being around people that exude that, being around that kind of energy, being around that kind of consciousness.
Which is a piece of why we're discussing teachers and why that was a part of the journey is finding guides that exude what we want to strengthen within ourself. Because if you go to learn from someone, you're learning how they behave, how they act, how they
Mm-hmm.
move, how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning how to emulate that to a degree and embody that. Something that I'm very grateful for that I didn't even realize until we started teaching and working with people more is how fortunate I have been to find guides like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've been saying, they're not, to us, super common.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 3 in my life, being Maharshi, Buck, and you, as humans that I look up to and that I like to learn from and feel to a degree. And when we started teaching and working with people more, I realized that people were really searching for that and
Mm.
having to go through teacher after teacher after teacher after teacher and maybe thinking they had it, and then that something happened and that fell apart, and then looking over here and looking over here, and I guess I realized how fortunate I've been to find not just 1 but 3 and to not have to really struggle to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel for people who are looking. I think that that plays a role in people that continue to learn from different teachers, is that they're looking for that kind of guide for themselves
Mm-hmm.
that feels good to them.
Yeah, and that's just part of the journey. I feel like that's what's beautiful about just life, because that's their path,
Mm-hmm.
is to get so engrossed in one thing, and then at some point, maybe this lifetime, maybe the next another one, be like, maybe there's more. And then go down another path and then come to the realization, maybe there's more. And that's life. It's just we're all here to grow and learn stuff for a while, and then realize that, oh, maybe I can learn a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing that I've noticed, that there's a trend it's in the dog industry in a big way. Uh, but then also in other industries, and that is, to me, it's kind of a constantly learning trap,
Mm.
where this constantly learning new techniques in the dog industry, going to one trainer one weekend and the next weekend going to another trainer. Maybe the first trainer is shock collars, maybe the second trainer is the gentle method, like us. And and then Frankensteining their approach to dog handling. And again, to us, those two things are so diametrically opposite. The gentle method and shock collars. They're coming from completely different directions and angles and feeling. And so people that we see who are going bouncing from trainer to trainer, and trying to come up with some, I don't know, some way, their own unique way of handling, but they're using totally different methods of feeling.
Mm.
And
The feeling behind the tools
the
is
energy
different.
behind the
Mm-hmm.
tools, the energy behind the techniques, the methods. And our brain goes to, well, what about the animal? Again, what about the dogs? Because these trainers, they're going around and learning all of these different things that have different angles to dog handling, that, and also the angles have different feeling and different energy to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the dog, for 6 months, they learn this one way or two ways. And then the trainer comes in with a completely new thing. And it's like, how does that feel to the animal? Because a lot of times they can be coming from opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, it might not just be in,
Like balance training.
right, like, it might not just be 6 months they're doing this, 6 months they're doing that. It might be within minutes
Yeah.
where they're scaling on an e-collar, and then all of a sudden they're doing the gentle method, and then they're using treats within a 30-minute period.
Yeah.
And that's even more confusing or stimulating or unnerving, is what's next.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we're not down on learning. I feel like that should always be a part of life. That's a part of my life. That's a
Mhm.
part of your life. That's a part of everyone's life.
Mhm.
Where every second we're learning and changing. But for Buck, I think about him and I'm like, he doesn't go to other people's clinics
Mhm.
because he can get the job done with the method that he has. He doesn't need to constantly learn other techniques and other ways of doing things because he's efficient in what he does with any horse.
Well, also, if in certain paths you realize how much there's to learn in one technique.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no time to learn other things because there's so much to learn in this technique.
And I feel like that's where we are, where I am constantly learning, but I'm just constantly learning within this methodology, within this approach.
I think that's such a great point because I think that's overlooked right now is the sometimes the ability to learn in one approach. And if you're not jumping around, does that mean you're not learning?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we can all agree if in the dog world and horse world, consistency is very important. And so, again, coming back to this constantly learning and bopping around to different methodologies, where is the consistency in that? That also can contribute to probably some confusion and tough feeling in the animals.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also just a potentially slower trajectory of growth within those methodologies.
Mm-hmm.
Because what could be the case is a person learns 3 different things, but if you have 100 hours, let's say, or 10,000 hours, like they'll say, like mastering is 10,000
Oh
hours,
gosh, yeah, the
and
whole Malcolm Gladwell thing.
but you divide that into 3, and you're not mastering any of them.
Mm.
You're just getting kind of good at 3 things instead of taking that time and getting farther along the path of one.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're doing more, it's going to take you longer to get better at
Right.
all those things that you're implementing.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the 10,000 hour thing is just a load of malarkey. I think it's way more than that.
I agree.
One other thing about this constantly learning thing is for us, like we can get it done. And so there's also not this desire to go searching anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think about that as well. Like Buck also, he can get it done so he doesn't need to search anymore. There's that element to it.
Which, as someone, I used to learn a lot of stuff. When I was younger, I was constantly learning all the time with many different things in all the different realms. And to finally land on things that feel good has brought me so much peace.
Will probably feel good, but also can get the job done.
Yeah, that also have results and that get me where I want to go. Yeah, there's a release that happens in that of not having to keep looking for the thing because I've found it.
Yeah. Yeah,
For
I mean,
now.
I feel very fortunate to have found TM. I didn't even have a choice in that. My parents had already learned meditation and whatnot, but to have found Buck, that took a while.
Mm-hmm.
A while. That's obviously going to be subjective, but it took a minute to find Buck because I was searching in the dog world for this.
You were looking in the wrong field.
I was searching because we couldn't get it done.
Yeah. Yep.
We couldn't get it done, so I was searching. And then we found Buck, and then the rest is history. But I feel like that's a very big element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Very big element to it. Regarding searching, I know that there's a lot of people out there searching for different ways to get their dog to a better place. I know that there's a lot of people out there searching, and I know there's a lot of dog trainers out there searching for ways to help people with their dogs. And they're also coming at it from helping dogs. But I feel that one thing that we've observed over the years is a lot of people want to have their dogs change, but they are all not willing to change themselves. And so to me, again, coming back to the feeling of the animal, how does that feel to them? Because if we aren't willing to change and shift things to help them feel better, then how are we getting that job done? Tools to overpower them. An example of this is I was listening to this podcast many years ago of this very well-known dog trainer, very well-known, probably millions of followers on social platforms and probably one of the biggest podcasts. And this person was talking about how they helped this one couple who had a young kid, a young boy, with their dog. And they were having a hard time with it, and they were thinking about euthanizing it, and kind of this trainer was the last resort. And so they went to this trainer and put some tools on it, shock collar, prong collar, and saved the dog's life. And they were able to keep the dog. And this trainer proceeded to talk about when he felt for the little boy because he put himself in the little boy's shoes and how hard it might have been if he was a kid when he woke up and asked, "Where's so-and-so? Where's our dog?" And the parents having to say like, "Oh, we couldn't deal with it. We had to kill it," however they put it, and how hard that could have been. And so there's a lot of empathy for this kid, which I understand, I see, I feel. But my attention was with the dog because now this dog is able to be controlled and overpowered and guided through life by this couple, and this little boy didn't lose his dog. But the dog has the same feelings. Maybe they changed a little bit, but probably not a lot. But now they just can overpower the dog through life in the guise of guiding it through life. But it has the same feelings. But now, if it expresses those feelings, we all know what happens. And so my attention doesn't go with the humans, the couple. Doesn't go to the little boy. It goes to that dog who's in that house, stuck in that house with the same feelings. And now it can just be punished and controlled in those feelings. And that's where we come from. That's the angle that we come at this from. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast. There's just different gradations of feeling, different ways that people feel. I understand where this dog trainer was coming from. And I understand that there's so many people out there dog trainers who are coming at helping animals from this avenue. And I understand that positive only come at it from the angle where it's like, if we can't help the dog with positive only, then it should be euthanized, because a life of abuse, what kind of life is that? I understand these points of view. I feel them. I have no disdain for them. We just feel things differently. We see things differently. And I hope at some point down the road that positive only realizes that there's a different way than just force out there. There's us. That you don't have to kill these dogs. And if you don't kill them, that they don't have to be abused to get the job done.
I think that a point that's coming up with for me right now, and it's something that is so integral to our work, is the way that we work with dogs. We're getting there. We're getting to the goal with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting there together
Yep.
and not and not anything else.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a it's a path that we walk with the dog.
Yeah.
And so instead of putting a tool on them or medicating them or whatever these other paths entail, we're doing everything we can to put ourselves in the dog's shoes, look at their life in a holistic way, change ourself to be the best guide that we can be for them, and then move with them through their feelings, through their expressions, through their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a really that can be a very tricky thing, because if we look at it from this perspective of getting there with them, and another beautiful thing about natural horsemanship and the way we handle dogs, and this is a testament to a degree of how challenging it can be if you do it to the maximum, is that we are the cage.
Mm-hmm.
We are the cage. We are those tools. We don't use those tools. We are those tools in the relationship, rather than relying on this external thing to then guide the dog, because there's no feeling in a cage. The e-collar doesn't feel.
Well, maybe to a very small degree,
Well,
because
yes.
there's consciousness in everything.
Well,
But
yes. You get what I'm saying. But
I do.
I feel that if I realize that there's a lot of people out there who they want to help. They want to help their dog. I also realize that there's a lot of people out there that want a dog, and they don't understand how much work that can take to get there with them.
Mm-hmm.
They want a good dog. And I understand why tools and overpowering dogs is so popular, because it's so hard to get there with them, depending on what dog you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of advanced dogs out there that are nasty and very challenging. And it's much easier to use tools instead of being the tool. That takes a lot of devotion and sacrifice.
Can you describe that more? What does it mean to be the tool instead of having a tool?
It means that the dog, when they are ready for things, then they do the things. As an example, letting them off leash. Allowing dogs off leash with an e-collar, that can happen pretty darn quick.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, that is very freeing for them. Feels very good to them to be able to experience that, and so on and so forth. But it doesn't take much to realize that there's a lack of feeling in that, because if that tool went away, it might take a week, might take 2 weeks, might take 3 weeks, might take a month, 2 months. But what is the relationship founded on? It's not connection.
Or connection the way that we are
It's a level of connection.
Yeah.
Just like food is a level of connection. But when those things go away or they're outlawed, they're banned, or you don't have money for them, then you have to do the work.
Or they don't work. The
Or
dog doesn't want
the
food
dog, or they don't work, then the dog doesn't get off leash because it doesn't have the skill to do so. And the human doesn't have the skill set to help them get off leash. Or as another example, us being the cage, is that we make adjustments in our life to ensure that that dog does not need a cage. If it needs a cage, then we are going to be the one to help guide it through that experience.
For example, if it needs a cage because it destroys things.
Yes.
Instead of putting it in a cage, we will help them work through their need to destroy things.
Exactly. Or if they don't like loud noises, we don't put them in a cage and then throw a blanket over them and dose them up with drugs. We teach them how, we help them rationalize that they are safe. We do the work. We don't take shortcuts. Because to us, if we're talking about this maximum feeling, and again, we don't have any disdain for cages or people who use cages or people who use shock collars. Everyone, it's a choose your own path and role in life. But for us, we just choose and have chosen a path to where we do the work. We do the work because we don't rely on anything else to do the work for us. I know I've mentioned it before, but Buck, he can handle any horse and get it to a good place. But he still chooses to breed his own horses and make life easy for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But he can take any horse and help it get to a good place. But he chooses an easier path for himself. I'm not quite sure, and this is just coming back to why it makes sense why people use tools instead of this other way of going about it, is because there are a lot of advanced dogs out there and not that are matched with not advanced handlers. And what it would take, a lot of times what it takes for these advanced dogs to feel seen and heard is sacrifice and devotion. If we're going about it through this maximum level of feeling. Because when you get one of those dogs that needs 100 on an e-collar and you choose to bring that being into your life and you choose to not use 100 on an e-collar, but choose to guide them through feeling, you get to feel what it feels like. And that is pretty hardcore.
You get to feel what an expression of 100 on an e-collar feels like.
Yeah.
But the expression, not the zap.
Yeah.
Not the shock of it.
Yeah, you get to feel what a feeling feels like that needs 100 on an e-collar. And then you have to learn to navigate that feeling in yourself and what it makes you feel. And then guide that being that's feeling those things to a good place. That's where the difficulty lies. It's so much easier to just push a button or use food if food works.
Or use a cage or a crate.
Or use a cage or use a whatever, prong collar. Than to feel those feelings and go through that potentially much longer process.
I don't think it's necessarily just an advanced dog. it's also just a dog that needs more than what a person has to give.
Very true.
Or maybe they're all kind of mild-tempered dogs or feeling dogs, but there are 5 of them or 6
Mhm.
of them or 7 of them.
Or it
Or the
could just
person has children,
mm,
or there's
yeah,
so many other experiences and lifestyles that come
very true.
about that have the same challenge.
Yeah, it could be a fairly really decent dog with just a couple things, but the human doesn't have patience for those few little things.
Right. Or the person is like starting up a business and all their
Mhm.
attention's going into something else,
Yeah.
or they just gave birth and so their attention's going into there's so many other things in life that will take attention and time, which make it hard for a person to give in this way
Mhm.
to a dog because of maybe how their life is set up, or
Or the decisions that they're making in life. I
yeah,
feel like one
priorities.
thing that we do is when we make decisions, we take into consideration our the beings in our life.
Yeah.
That's a very big deal. And if we make decisions that we know are maybe going to put pressure on a particular being in our life, uh, we know that we're going to make up for it in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, there's prudence.
There's prudence, which is such a beautiful word.
Yeah.
But that oftentimes the dog is just brought along regardless of the decisions in life that are made by humans.
Mhm.
Having a kid and kind of thinking about the dog and how it's going to affect them, but then the kids arrives and then they're just a lost cause.
Mhm.
And I get it because life is challenging like that.
And a lot of things in life take attention and
Yeah,
time and energy.
yeah. But I feel that the when I think about Bach and when I think about people who are more of this lecturer and lecturer, they have so much more prudence in life. They don't overextend themselves or make choices in life that are going to disregard the needs and feelings of the other beings in their life
Mhm.
that are dependent on them.
Yeah.
And that gives them this superpower almost.
Yeah, I think for us that is coming from experience of the other
Hmm.
and taking on too much and overextending ourselves and maybe sacrificing too much of ourselves because we brought in more than we could handle, and learning how to balance that
Hmm.
is has been something that we have learned
Yeah,
together.
definitely.
And so this isn't coming from a place of not understanding the other feeling and living with it for a while and maybe making a choice and then realizing in the middle of that experience, maybe in the middle of having that project or that being in our life, the toll it's taking, but honoring our choice and then later
Hmm.
making a different one.
Yeah. Next time
Next,
choosing differently.
yeah,
Yeah. A life work balance
yeah,
is that's something that people I feel like struggle with so frequently, or just a life balance,
mhm,
like managing one's own enjoyment in life within their life that they've created
right,
in terms of family, kids, responsibilities, might not even necessarily be work related.
yeah.
But all of these things play such a big role in this ability to communicate with dogs through feeling. Because if we are experiencing stress and anxiety based on the choices we've made in life, how are we going to be able to guide these other dogs? Or if we experience reactivity, triggeredness, uh, guilt, sorrow, depression, etc., how are we able to uh, if we've experienced those things and are stuck in those things, haven't risen beyond them, grown out of them, because those things are beautiful. We're all going to experience those things, but to come out the other side of them rather than be stuck in the cloud or the chaos of them. Because if we're stuck in the chaos of them, how are we able to then give and coach people on how to get out of the cloud or the chaos of these triggered feelings, anxiety, stress, depression, etc.? How are we able to coach people through that when we are ourselves experiencing it?
Mm-hmm. To me, a guide isn't someone who doesn't have worldly experiences anymore, who's just transcended everything, who doesn't have stress, who doesn't feel any big, like anger, sadness, grief, resentment, who doesn't feel any of those things. It's more how overshadowed does the guide get by the feelings, even though they might be having them? I know in my life I'm going to feel sadness. I
Yes.
know in my life I'm going to feel stress. I'm going to feel
Yes.
anger. I'm going to feel um, shame. But it's how consumed do I get in those feelings? How lost do I get in those feelings? And then do I bring them to the table when it's time to guide others?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I feel that our work with the pack, one of the most beautiful gifts they've given to me is learning how to put that aside for them
Mm-hmm.
and truly put it aside. Not to say that it doesn't exist or, yeah, not to say that it doesn't exist, but to leave it at the door and walk into the interaction without bringing that with me.
Yeah, yes,
And
that's,
that is a hard thing to do, especially when you live in the home with the being that you're guiding.
yeah.
But a gift that they can give, a gift that dogs can give us is the opportunity to put those things aside
Mm-hmm.
and give to them.
Yeah.
And it can actually be very healing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that as hard as it is, they are here for at the perfect time, the perfect place to give exactly what it is that we need.
Yeah.
And we can either choose that, however difficult it may be, or easy it may be, or medium difficulty it may be, or we can send that away and to ourselves in the future at a future time to learn, is maybe we don't feel that we can handle it right now, and that's okay.
And then they would be here to have that experience.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing because when, so many times people do get dogs that are too challenging and they choose to euthanize them. And that is what it is. It's a hard thing for both parties to experience. But we believe that both parties signed up for that experience.
Yeah.
And both parties will learn from that experience
Yeah.
and grow from that experience. For us, in our process of choosing somebody, again, we wanted to find somebody who could get the job done and who was the lecturer and the lecturer. And for me, knowing that Buck and his mentors could get the job done with any horse, that meant a lot. That carried a lot of weight, as opposed to knowing that they had a ceiling, knowing that they chose to put a horse down because they couldn't help them, behaviorally euthanize a horse. To me, that wasn't a complete method or approach. I wanted to know that my mentor had the answers to get it done. That meant a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just who we chose to learn from. I wanted them to have the maximum ability to feel any kind of being with any feeling and navigate that with them.
Mm-hmm.
That was the pinnacle. That was the highest first. And thankfully we did find that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other element to this is, as you just mentioned, is this ability to almost set things aside. But I feel like if we are judgmental of things, it's much more challenging to set them aside. Judgmental of ourselves, judgmental of the being, because then there is this duality and lack of connection and understanding. And when that's present, the communication most likely will break down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it just comes back to the judgment of a dog's feelings and what they're having and having that go away, and just coming back to that whole point. Instead of being able to have those feelings ourselves in our own lives and have those feelings passed through. You know, that woven mesh isn't so tightly woven that the feelings get stuck and there's judgment and guilt and pain and sorrow and all of that stuff. We can still feel those things, as you mentioned. And that's a beautiful thing, because we don't want to be this numb, disconnected thing,
Mm-hmm.
being in life, because then we're not feeling. That's not feeling. The beauty in it is being able to feel all of those things, but have the mesh in life be so expanded that it just passes through. We experience sorrow and maybe just all of the things, but it just passes right through.
Yeah.
And that takes quite a bit of time maybe to develop, depending on who we are.
I think a part of the passing through is awareness that it passes through. So it might not, maybe the mesh isn't fully expanded, but realizing that the mesh isn't fully expanded and something is stuck, but knowing that it will get unstuck, because life is ever changing and there's an opportunity for things to move through us in time. The most excited, happy, wonderful feelings pass. The most terrible, awful feelings pass. Like, yeah, it's just,
Coming back to us being the tool, I feel another element, another way of looking at it is, if we use those tools and we're letting a dog off leash before they're ready for that, or we're using a cage. Another way of looking at it is, if we're using a cage, that means we don't have the time to teach our dog how to not use the cage, that the cage isn't needed.
Yeah. Time, desire, skill.
And so coming at it from that lens of time, I don't have time for you, so I have to put you in this cage. I don't have the skill for you, so I'm going to put you in this cage. And I get that maybe you use a cage for a little bit and then they graduate from it.
Yeah.
I understand that. Or you use the e-collar for a little bit, you use food for a little bit, and then you graduate from it because we're playing maybe catch up to feeling the dog and educating ourselves so that then we then can educate the dog. But in that process, maybe realize that if we ourselves don't have time for the dog to teach them these things or the skill set, they're not dumb. They know what's happening in our eyes. Science hasn't proven how intelligent they are, but in our experience, dogs know they know who we are. They know the choices in life that we make. They know that we chose to be lazy and not take them out. They know we chose to go to a movie instead of walking them. Like, they know these choices that we make in life. We believe that they're that intelligent because it's feeling. And if we choose to not feel them to the maximum, they know that. Just like kids know that. And consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously, those choices add up and they have an effect on the relationship ultimately.
Yeah.
But when we choose them, that's when the relationship really elevates, because they know that we consistently choose them. We choose to guide them through the feeling as opposed to take a shortcut. We choose to teach them how to move through this way, not through pain and not through force or overpowering.
Or I know on some level that my parents are going through a divorce and a hard time, but they're still giving to me.
Yeah.
I know that my parent or one of my guides is going through something with their health, and they're still giving to me.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. On the flip side, though, the wonderful, beautiful, fantastic thing about dogs is that even when people aren't giving, they still love us. They still follow us. They still give to us.
Yeah. It's pretty remarkable, the things that we humans put them through, the different things we subject them to. And when we come home, they're still wagging their tail. They still love us. Not all of them. Some of them will blow us off and whatever. A funny thing about it is that over the years, I've seen some really, really nasty dogs with really green people. And I swear, I look at that dog and they know how innocent and ignorant that handler is, and they choose to be good.
Like, I could pull this person over and go kill that thing.
I could be such a demon right now. But man, I realize that this person who is caring for me has no clue. So I'm just gonna keep it together. I've seen that quite a few times, and I'm just like, wow, that's really weird to observe. But
I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the intangible. Maybe a challenging thing to pinpoint, but this intangible idea of feeling.
mhm,
We talk about it a lot. A lot of our work is based on it. It's a very big topic. We could spend a whole season of this podcast talking just about feeling. I want to talk about it now and bring to light more of our definition of it, our experience of it.
mhm.
So, what is your experience of it? What is maybe your feeling behind feeling? What is it?
How I would describe feeling is, hmm, there's so much stillness and quietness inside. And therefore, I'm able to pick up on the feelings and vibrations of things. My brain, it's very interesting. My brain works in hyperdrive, but within hyperdrive, there's stillness in it. There's a duality of complete quietness and stillness. And then at the same time, there's hypersensitivity and awareness to the environment and most definitely the beings that I'm surrounded by, environments I'm passing through.
Mm.
Kind of like a Formula One driver driving 200 miles an hour. The amount of things that they're processing is just insane. But there's also a quietness inside of them, I guarantee that.
Mhm.
Maybe it's similar to the zone or being in the flow, like that Michael Jordan would talk about in his best performances. He would mention being in that state where he almost everything was quiet. It was like he was the only one in the stadium, and he knew exactly where to go, when to go, what to do to succeed.
Mhm.
So there's this polarization of both of those things there at the same time.
What do you think was different between, because those experiences specifically, maybe not the flow state, but Formula One at sports, that's adrenalized. That's an adrenalized state. What's the difference? Because I know that you're not adrenalized when you're
Mhm.
in feeling.
Mhm.
So what is that?
I guess to put it in a different way is I've spent so much time meditating and sitting beyond the instincts and senses, the absolute in being, that at the same time of that, when somebody practices transcendental meditation, y- you you transcend beyond those instincts, beyond your senses, and beyond thought. You almost you get to the origin of thought and the origin of feeling. but it's not devoid of thought or feeling. It's the source of it. And so when you sit in the source for so long, so frequently, so consistently, there becomes this restful alertness, this kinetic energy that is present. And there's that feeling of going 200 miles an hour, you could say, like a Formula One driver. You get to experience all of the thoughts, all of the feelings, because a lot of life is, there's a lot of things that happen in life that I feel that a lot of that I wasn't aware of, and it's feeling. It's almost like we don't think about our heartbeat, but it happens. We don't think about breathing, but it happens. It's this autonomous thing that happens. And the same thing with our brain and our brain activity and our feelings is that it's autonomously happening behind the scenes, behind the illusion of thought, the screen of life. And I feel that the quietness and that transcendence and going beyond the senses and the instincts brings to light the breath of thought and the heartbeat of thought, the breath of feeling, the heartbeat of feeling. And you become conscious and aware of it, but not enough to where you need to tell yourself to do it, just like your heart beats or your breath you breathe. You just feel more.
Would you say that if in transcendence you go to the origin of feeling, or you experience a quieter existence to be able to feel the more subtle qualities of it,
Yeah.
would you say that then in life and activity there's recognition?
Yes. That's exactly it.
Okay.
You see and feel and interact with the subtleties rather than not being aware of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just think about the concept of all of these different concepts of meditation and breath work and all like massage therapy, massage work, whatever. It's to feel more. It's to become aware of these things in life that are more subtle. They're in the background. Our physical body we can disregard until we need to go to a physical therapist or get massage. Same thing with our breath. Becoming aware of these things that are so autonomous. Our physical body, our muscles, our structure, our breath, our heartbeat. But we get so caught up in life, in the feeling. We get caught up in feeling and distracted by feeling, overpowered by feeling, consumed by feeling, that we lose sight of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, it's almost, it's becoming It's stepping out of feeling so that we can feel. Because if we don't step out of feeling, we're consumed in it. We need this other angle, this other perspective or point of view to help us remember that we are feeling. And we're feeling a heck of a lot more than we realize. Just like there's a lack of awareness of all of these different things that are transpiring in life that are affecting our lives that we disregard because we're consumed with a goal, a desire, a thought, a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
That's not unity. That's not harmony. Because if we're so consumed in one, we are disregarding another. And so when we step out, when we go beyond the senses, this is just my experience. When we go beyond the senses and the whole meditation, it gives us that other perspective. So we can not get so engrossed and consumed and lose sight of the connectedness in life, the unity in life, the harmony in life. And see how our actions affect things, how our inaction affects things. So that to me is kind of my experience with feeling is that what is your experience with feeling?
To piggyback off of this idea that you're bringing up about what we are aware of feeling, because what I'm hearing is that it's not like everyone is in feeling. It's just the consciousness in it and what we might be feeling. And there are qualities that are perhaps easier to feel than other qualities in life. For example, it's easier for me to feel Stitch than it is for me to feel the stranger's dog across the street. And that's my own conception. To me, if life is full of energy, if atoms and molecules and the physical world is energy, or you could say is consciousness, feeling is the interaction with energy. It is an exchange with energy.
It's the byproduct.
Yes. It is the communication and the witnessing and the exchange between energy or between consciousness. It is when those two things, two pieces of energy, let's say, communicate or connect with each other or witness each other in some way. So if we think of like a tree in feeling, it perhaps sits in connection and witnessing and in exchange with its environment as we do, just in its own way. Just as we do, but in its own way, in its own vibration, in its own time. But feeling, to me, feels almost like an action, an exchange. And I agree with you with everything that you say about it. And the piece about what I was mentioning between what is easy and what is harder. So and you and I, we went on a walk a couple of months ago in Colorado, and we were talking about this regarding man-made objects and nature, and how if I hold a rock, or I hold a blade of grass, or I hold a flower, and I sit in more silence, or I sit in more presence, there is this ability to connect and feel that form, that entity. But for me in my development, if I hold a water bottle, it's harder for me to have that same level of feeling with that object than it is with something else that maybe is closer to its natural form. Or maybe it's the vibration of the difference. Just like it might be easier to connect and feel your body, feel your emotions, feel your mind, feel another person than it is to feel the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there is feeling in it, because we're at the ocean right now and people are drawn to it, people enjoy it, people gravitate, there's a resonance there. So there is this feeling, it's just how conscious is it? How
Mm-hmm.
unconscious is it?
How effortless is it?
How effortless is
Yeah.
it? And I think that something on like my path is I feel that in order to be in feeling, there is presence needed. There's presence in the moment. There's being present needed for that, which is a challenge in this day and age to feel present. Like with our human friends or family, let alone with something else. But the more I open myself up to different ways of feeling, the more I'm having an experience and less of an intellectual understanding of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling enriched by the different expressions of it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, being able to enliven one's ability to effortlessly feel things that are close, and that we love, that's more effortless to feel to a degree. Things that are more distant, that we're not accustomed to. How do we feel about those things? How do we feel those things?
Mm-hmm.
That is, I feel, the skill. Because if aliens were to arrive tomorrow, that might, we might be overshadowed by some feelings. A lot of people might be overshadowed by some pretty strong feelings. And in that overshadowedness, jumping to instinct, we lose our ability to feel
Yeah, I think
to
that
a degree. We're feeling, but there's also the feeling is shrouded in and covered in this muddiness of instinct and self-preservation, which is arguably probably the most challenging thing to overcome, is that self-preservation at the root cause. It might be the root of it all.
There's, from what you're saying about a feeling and then being overshadowed, when there isn't an overshadowed quality coming up, what is there instead is openness.
Yes.
That is a quality that I'm recognizing more and more in feeling, is being open, which feels pretty raw and neutral, if those can even exist together.
Yeah. It's almost like there's more acceptance of things.
Yeah.
And within that acceptance, there's this neutrality. And that, to me, is this almost acceptance of all possibilities and that anything is possible. There could be just who knows what. And so when one gets to that state, and to bring it back to dogs, it's just when we're handling dogs, who knows what can come out? What will come out? What comes, comes. And there's acceptance around it. There's not judgment. There's not reactivity. There's just acceptance. And there's a neutrality that comes along with that, as you were just mentioning. And that, to me, is that pure feeling. Because if there's anything other than that, then the connection that we have with that other being that's feeling something is a little muddy.
Yeah.
And there's just a little more time and work that needs to be done in order for us to potentially feel a little more.
There's also an experience that's common of an inability to consciously feel, because we're feeling everything, but consciously feel something that is feeling different than the way that we feel. And that can be in a conversation with a human when the emotional feelings shift and people are having different views, and then there's a disconnect between the experience of feeling, or it coming in a form of an animal. And people maybe thinking that is less feeling, or not feeling, or whatever else people might think, or not even think there is feeling, because they're not human. That's a human experience.
They're just a thing.
They're just an animal.
Yeah.
And then taking that to trees. And that's the funny thing about science, is that science is starting to pick up on things, intelligence, in ways that are showing intelligence in forms that are different, and expressions that are different than the human one. And there are limits present that can keep a person from more connection.
I just feel like it's conditioning in our thoughts.
Yeah.
The things that we've been fed, the things that we've been conditioned. That writes our story to a degree.
And the space to explore, too, by everything else that's coming about. And maybe it's not a lifetime for someone to explore that. That's great.
Yeah.
That's for them. There's one of the principles from Science of Creative Intelligence about unity and diversity.
Unity exists in diversity.
I feel that that is applicable here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You and I, when we were on this walk, we kind of wrote down, we were going through different forms of feeling on the walk. And I wrote them down. And I wanted to share them here because there are different forms.
And it's just more of an example of things that Cole and I talk about.
And then maybe there's more. Maybe next season of the podcast, we blow this out and we come up with something completely different. But right now, these were some of the thoughts that we were having. And the ways of feeling that we thought of were feeling emotions. So feeling happiness, feeling joy, feeling ... and that expression. Feeling the senses. So
taste, sight, hearing,
touch,
feeling
something on your body, feeling something,
feeling cold, feeling hot.
Yeah. And then feeling beings. So feeling each other, feeling the dogs.
Feeling connection, which is kind of not, I mean, to me, there's feeling connection, but that feeling of connection, then the level above that is emotion or a feeling of the sense. It's a finer level of feeling.
So maybe this is a scale.
Yeah, well, there's some scaling, I feel, to it. Yeah.
Feeling energy, which we've touched on, but also that could be perceived as like feeling the energy of a space, feeling like the collective energy of a group, feeling maybe an exchange of it, feeling the expression of good or bad.
I feel like that's almost that's perception. That's feeling perception. It's feeling this concept. It's feeling a concept almost.
And then feeling of everything. Which perhaps in this lifetime I'll get the joy of that experience.
Yeah, it's a funny feeling. Is just such a funny thing. It's just such a funny thing. There's so many levels to it. There's so many gradations to it. There's so many different rationales to it. And, another element or facet to feeling, and this is just ties into kind of what I was talking about regarding feeling, my understanding of it is how much of life, how much do we incorporate into it, and how much do we exclude from it? Because we could say that our countries feel very strongly about supporting us and caring for us. And yet they will start wars and send us to a war to die. And that's a level of feeling, but not maximum feeling in my eyes. And similarly with, let's say, husbandry, animal husbandry, there's this feeling of immense gratitude for the animals and appreciation for them and a feeling of wanting to care for them so much throughout their life and give them a good life, but then kill them and eat them. And so feeling is just so multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. This world is just so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's such a mix mash of complete dichotomy and chaos and beauty and terror, and to feel it all and to find beauty in it all and connectedness to it all and navigate it all. Man, that's navigate it all with integrity and compassion and empathy, especially in this day and age,
Mm.
is pretty challenging with all the distractions that we have with technology and AI. I mean, AI is its own thing. I feel like the farther we get away from the simpler things in life, the more we create things, man-made things, the farther we get away from feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because the construction of these things has there's a lot of feeling that goes into the creation of these things. All of the components. And we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but all of the feeling or lack thereof that goes into these things. And then when they're created, are they elevating feeling or are they not?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, yeah, the farther we get away from nature, I mean, we have a hard enough time as it is with nature.
Yeah.
And we're just making life even more challenging for us with just more and more technology. It's like we haven't quite figured out how to navigate nature, and we're already making life even more challenging for ourselves in terms of being able to grasp feeling. Like, we can't even feel for other countries, other cultures,
Other people,
other people,
other species.
other species. And we just keep flooding ourselves with new things. It's a very peculiar thing.
Something that brings light to that for me, because that can feel very dark. Which is
Yeah.
not bad. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. No, it's just time for darkness
Yeah.
to reign right now.
Something that I believe, and I'm not inside the mind of all humans on the planet, so I can't say, or all animals too. Yeah, is that there, I believe, is a piece of everyone that feels called to nature in some way. In some way. It might be like they love when it's sunny out. They love the sun. Or it's an animal in their life, or it's going for a walk in nature, or it's living near the ocean, or it's living on a mountain. like opening the window and feeling fresh air. I believe that there's a quality in each of us that feels called by it, that fills me up in some way. Because as much as we're creating space, it's as if that piece of humanity can't go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I just said it jokingly, but I do feel that this is just, it's time to shine.
Yeah.
Is less connection, less harmony, less feeling. It's just that time.
Yeah.
In existence. But hopefully, like, our goal is to help enliven more feeling and change that time, shift it, help move the needle of time towards more feeling and harmony and connection and awareness that we are connected to things. They might not feel things the way that we do, but that doesn't mean we need to anthropomorphize them. That if they don't feel the way that we do, that means that they don't feel.
Yeah.
Let's end with a story.
Starting and ending with a story.
And this story is from the Mahabharata, which is from the Vedic tradition. And it's the story of these 5 brothers who had a kingdom, lost their kingdom, then regained their kingdom. And at the end of their life, they're walking to the Himalayas to just end their life there. And along their journey, this dog falls in with them. So they're walking to the Himalayas, and along the way, each of them slowly succumb to dying. And the last one was named Yudhishthira. And he's walking along with this dog, and it comes time for him to leave and go to the afterlife. And so Indra comes down in his chariot to bring Yudhishthira, who was just this righteous man and full of integrity and right action. He comes and says, Yudhishthira, it's time for you to leave the body. Let's go. Hop in my chariot. And so he goes to get in the chariot and bring the dog with him. And Indra says, there's no dogs allowed in my chariot. And so Yudhishthira said, well, I can't abandon this dog and go with you, because I made a vow to guide and protect any being that sought my protection and guidance in life. And so, having made that choice, it was apparently one last test for him to test his righteousness. And the dog turned into his dad, Dharma. And they went off into the heavens. And the reason why we wanted to end with that story is, I mean, for a multitude of reasons. Because in that book, there are no dogs in that book.
Yeah.
And it is a long book.
Yeah.
Cole just listened to the audiobook, and it was how long?
Like 45 hours.
45 hours long.
Yeah, no dogs ever in it.
until the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And we're obviously dog people, but it to us just goes beyond that. And that is just the level of selflessness and sacrifice. It represents is very wholesome to us.
Mm-hmm. It's very kindred.
Very kindred. Yeah, that's a good word for it. And just that idea of no being left behind to a degree. I would expand that to no feeling left behind. Because it's not about leaving feelings behind or feeling something different. It's learning to feel what we feel. That's, it's there for a reason to help us grow and learn.
Like the dog was there for a reason.
Yeah. And it's not just our feelings, but also the feelings of others. We're all in this together. And as we said in the last podcast, that whole idea that was brought into the natural horsemanship world of feeling of the horse for the horse, it's feeling of the beings for the beings. It's such a beautiful and powerful and prudent point.
I've been aware of the Mahabharata for many years, partly because the Gita is within it. And some of the brothers, like Arjuna and Bhima, can be so emphasized. All 5 of the brothers are the embodiment of such divine qualities as humans. But I guess finally listening to it, I was so taken by Yudhishthira and his ability of right action and his righteousness and softness and ability to guide his family through hard times and guide his kingdom in glorious times, and to live the life that they did. I'm pretty sure their lifespan was longer than like a human's, and to live such a full, exalted existence and then come to the threshold of heaven and still be thinking of others and in service and in sacrifice. He's sacrificing heaven for a dog.
Mm.
I really appreciate that this story exists and that he lives in this story for people to learn
Mm-hmm.
from him, because there's so much to learn from him.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of wraps it back to the lecture and the lecturer.
Yeah.
Is having, not picking like the lesser of two evils, you could say, in role models, but finding someone, something that really exalts us, inspires us to feel and incorporate all of life and to sacrifice. That's a big thing. Learning is that's a big thing. Learning, what we're absorbing in life is a very big thing that shapes our actions, our responses. And yeah, I agree. It's been a story that has been the guiding light for me my whole life. And I'm also very grateful that it exists for people to read about.
Yeah.
If they have the patience for a giant book like that.
It is an epic, so
It is an epic,
there
and it's one
is,
of the oldest books on the planet.
yeah. If you've got 45 hours,
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you all for listening. We know this one was definitely maybe a little bit different than normal, but we appreciate you sharing time with us, and we appreciate you supporting dogs, however you support dogs, however you choose to guide dogs, however you choose to live.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know we're all learning, we're all growing, and we appreciate this plane we get to call home, Earth,
Mm-hmm.
life. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Until next time, enjoy.